Hi, welcome back to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. My name is Greg Norman, your host. Well, in our second episode, we get a chance to spend some time with the Mahre brothers, the Yakima, Washington twins, who were famous as World Cup racers and certainly Olympic skiers. Both of them, Phil was a gold medalist and Steve was a silver medalist in Sarajevo. We get a chance to talk to them about the early part of their career at White Pass up in Washington. And then we certainly are going to talk to them a little bit about the Olympics and their World Cup experience. They also involved in teaching the last 40 years. They were at Keystone for an awful long time and Deer Valley for about 18 years. And now they're on their own doing camps around the western part of the United States. And we'll talk to them a little bit about that. Because the interview went long, we're going to split it up into early skiing and certainly the Olympics. And then on our third episode, which we'll produce here pretty quick, we'll bring that to you as well because we've got some other good interviews we want to be able to bring at a time when we're not quite as much snow on the ground as we'd like. We're doing this back from the studios. Our first show was certainly from the chairlift, and we'll hopefully get back to that, but it's been pretty warm here in Great Lakes states. We're not getting as much skiing as we'd like here about the 11th of December, so hopefully that'll take place. So up next is the first part of an interview with Steve and Phil. We sat down and talked to them, and it was quite a thrill to be able to have that opportunity. I think the one thing that surprised me the most is the passion of which they talk about their skiing and certainly their love of country. And I think that'll come through during the interview. The second half of the show, we're going to get a chance to talk to Jack Pippin, who was the ski school director at Tahoe. And Jack's a longtime friend who used to be the ski school director at Mount Brighton. We're going to talk to Jack about his transition from Mount Brighton out to the mountains in the Lake Tahoe area. And I think you'll find it to be an interesting story. If you're a ski bum and you're 20, it's one thing, but to make a job change at that point in life, I think you'll find it to be a really interesting story. So hopefully Jack can give us some insight. And we'll talk to him a little bit about his change in career. I think he's going to tell you that it was certainly worth it. So up next, the Mahre brothers, and we'll be back in a second. Welcome back to Inside Great Lakes Skiing. We're talking with probably the best twins that have ever put on a pair of skis on a race hill, and certainly two of great America racers, Phil Mahre and Steve Mahre. First of all, guys, I'm assuming you're up in Yakima at the moment.
Yep.
Yes, we are.
Okay. If you'll see the picture behind me,
that's home base.
You guys grew up at right behind me. You grew up at a mountain, and I got two questions to start with that are completely unrelated to skiing. Who's the better motocross rider between the two of you? That's the first question I have.
Steve.
Okay.
Steve is.
If we go back to when we first started, I mean, it probably pretty even, but then Phil kind of stepped away from it and I continued doing it, and then really got serious when I was about 58, 60 about trying to do it, but even more serious. And so I'm definitely better than him right now.
Okay. So, okay. What was it about motocross?
The last time I was on a motorcycle, I took about a 5-minute nap. So that kind of ended, I said, God, that's enough of that.
What was it about motocross in the summer that attracted you guys? Because obviously you're going downhill one way. Is it just another way of going fast?
One side of it was we had friends that were into it. And so mom and dad wouldn't let us have bikes and so when we were 18, we just said, well, we'll go get them now. And within 2 years, I ended up tearing up both my knees, my ACLs on both my knees in 2 years on that thing and whatnot. But it was just something that we were interested in, but we weren't allowed to do it. And so when we turned 18, we just did it. And we did it quite a bit for probably about 4 or 5 years, even while we were ski racing then at that point in the summer months. But then kind of stepped away. And then, like I said, I got serious about it about 8 years ago again.
Okay. And the other question I had, which goes back to Dad and kind of were the beginnings. How did Dad get a nickname like Spike? Is there a story behind that?
Yes, there is. He was they have to move the clips on the chairlifts. They were internal clips. It was a riblet lift. They had to move the clips every 2 or 3 years, and because they didn't want them breaking the strands in the cable when they go around the bowl wheels. And it's called a Marlin spike. It's a pointed deal that they have to hammer into the cable to kind of open it up to get the clip in and out. Anyway, it was really, it's warm in the summer, and my dad was there working with the gentleman and sweating pretty profusely and stuff. And the guy said, the top of your head looks just like that marlin, Spike. And he got the name Spike after that. And
It's
it
stuck.
just stuck. Yeah. And people love Spike.
All right. Well, for you guys, one of the threads is that sometimes you're able to excel at something if the geography is correct. In this case, Dad takes over, certainly at White Pass, becomes mountain manager. You guys end up living there and moving there and the rest of it. You're from a large family. You've got 9 brothers and sisters. Well, 7 beside the 2 of you. I'm not sure a lot of people know that the family's that large, but having a mountain in the backyard doesn't hurt for the recreation. So I'm guessing, like anything else, if I live next to a golf course and I had thought of being on the PGA, it certainly doesn't hurt to have the golf course next door. How did you get to skiing? It's a kind of a dumb question when your dad's the mountain manager, but did you guys sort of attract to it like a fish in water? Was this just something that came natural?
Go ahead, Phil.
I think it was pretty natural. I mean, the biggest thing was, we were 40 miles from where we went to school. So it was about an hour and 15-minute bus ride to and from school. And you just couldn't go over to Jimmy's house after school. I mean, you rode a bus home and you were stuck. That was all there was. And so in the winter months, what do? You go out and play in the snow. We did all our homework on the school bus. It was just something that was enjoyable. We had fun at it. Ironically, Steve and my first love was football. We gave up U.S. ski team training camps to play football. We said, hey, we're playing football right now. When football's over, then we'll go skiing. So, skiing wasn't necessarily our life. It was something we loved to do, but it wasn't the only thing. And I think, it's the main reason I think we were successful was we were pretty, well-rounded athletes. We water skied in the summer. We played football. We just did a lot of different things. We pole vaulted in track, and skiing was just, like I said, something we did in the winter. It wasn't something we were, didn't really pursue it in the summer months. We never went to a summer camp other than once. I think Bob Beatty invited us when we were 12 to a summer camp in Bend, Oregon. Thought it'd be great to introduce the next generation coming along. I remember coming home from that and going, oh, those guys aren't that good. We were probably getting waxed by, 10 or 15 seconds a run, but I was like, give me a couple of years, I'll be beating those guys. And, lo and behold, at 15, that was the case. So, but we never went to a summer camp until we were really on the U.S. ski team.
Steve, in an age of specialization, you see that football helped. We got this idea, you got to be a single sport athlete, and the burnout rate is such a high level for both high school and travel sports. We all played in those days. We all played multiple sports because you got about tired of one, and the newness of the next season came up. So you see that the specialization of playing football and being able to, did you push it? Not push your kids, but is that something you thought was helpful to your career, and then maybe followed that through with your own children?
Well, I mean, I try to introduce them to, as much of those different sports as you can, and they'll migrate to the ones they like the most. That was what, Phil and I did. I mean, we migrated to the ones we enjoyed the most and got the most from. But I mean, I think it gives the opportunity to have that competition or competitive thoughts in your head for a lot of different things instead of just one. You figure out, hey, this worked for me in that sport. Maybe I got to work harder at this in this sport or whatnot. But you'll migrate to the one that you like the best. And like I said, or Phil said, football was our favorite. And then we came out of high school and we're both on the ski team by that time. And we had started, that's when we got our dirt bikes. And all of a sudden it became a little more important to us, or a lot of fun. But I was just too small coming out of high school to play football. I was 140 pounds as a senior. And, if I would have been 185, like I kind of ended my ski career, maybe if I was 185 when I came out of high school, I would have went and tried to play somewhere. But the way it was, I knew the writing was on the wall. The Olympics were a year away. We graduated in 75. The Olympics were basically, half a year away as far as making it in sports in a big way. And so that was our choice. I'm not going to try to go play football and get slivers in my ass from sitting on the bench. I'll put my boards on and see what I can do there. And so we committed ourselves really heavily to skiing at that time, definitely a lot more. But the summer months, we still tried to get away from it. Our first 6 years with the ski team, we went to every camp they had, in the summers and whatnot, did everything they asked of us. The last 4 years of our career on the ski team, we said no more summer skiing. I mean, after 1980, the Olympics in 80, we both thought about retiring. I mean, I did. I actually retired in 76 after the 76 games in Innsbruck, and then came back and skied through 80. But both of us thought about retiring after 80. And so we said, we'll give you our answer in September, whether we're going to come back and go 4 more years. And so we did that. We went back to the September camp, and then the next year we said, forget that, we'll come back in the November camp. And we did that. But those, all of a sudden, those last 4 years of our career were our best 4 years. Phil won 3 overall World Cups, Olympic medals, whatnot. And I won the World Championships in GS in 82, was, 3rd, 4th, 6th, 10th in the overall World Cup in those years. And so it really showed for us that getting away from it and having that enthusiasm to really, ski hard for 4 months of the year instead of maybe 8-10 months of the year. We only had to think about skiing for 4 or 5 months of the year and really be concentrated on it. And then you get us, hey, okay, I got a break. I can get away from this, refresh my mind, and then come back and get at it again when it comes time to do it.
Yeah. You guys had a lot of success early. You make the team early. Were you ready for it in your heads? And I say that because, and we're going to talk a little bit about, your commitment and Steve, Phil, you made a comment that until you won the gold medal, you recognize it wasn't all about you. So my question is did you guys have the confidence and the maturity at that age starting? Because, ski companies are sending you guys skis. And I mean, at an early age, you had more success than most young racers typically have.
Yeah.
Did you recognize?
Yeah, I think that. Go ahead.
Well, go ahead.
No, it was making the ski team at a young age was, I guess, a fortunate thing, but maybe a little bit unfortunate. I was named to the ski team when I was 15, and the very first year, 4 days before I was supposed to leave to go to the World Cup over in Europe, I got caught in an avalanche right there in our local area and broke my leg, boot top fracture, both bones. And it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. It was probably the good Lord telling you, you're not ready for what's coming down the pipe.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No.
You have the physical abilities and all that, but maybe you're not mentally tough enough. And I was successful as early on, but I think it just came easy. I didn't really think about it much. I just went out. I was having fun. I think it's you kind of look at a gymnast. They're 13, 14 years old. They're almost in their prime. And nowadays 16, 17, 18, and after that you're kind of over the hill. I tell you, when you're young like that, you're just having fun. You don't feel pressure. You're just a kid, having fun and pleasing your coach and loving what you're doing. And then with success comes pressure. And if you're not mentally tough, you'll get swallowed. You get eaten up. And luckily, like I said, I broke my leg. The next year, I re-broke that leg. 9 months later, re-broke that. So I missed a year and a half of skiing. The first race I came back to was our national championships, and I won the giant slalom. And it was just one of those deals. It was a teaching moment, a learning moment. But no, it's the sport it's brutal. I think that a lot of people think, it's such a luxury. You travel the world, see the world, and all that. I tell you, if I could have done it and and then done it in my backyard, I would have done it for a long, long time. But travel's not fun. And When you're an individual, it's a little easier than when you have a family. And Steve and I both had families, and it was just time to move on. But being young is it's fun, but along with success comes pressure.
Is it fair to say you're both fearless? And I say this because I covered the Europa Cup for a couple of years, and I heard a story about you, Phil, at St. Anton's, of maybe being the first park rider going 55 miles an hour backwards, 60 miles an hour backwards over a road. Is that story true?
Yeah, we had a World Cup downhill in St. Anton, and there's a jump right at the bottom, probably about, I don't know, 300 or 400 yards up from the finish. It was called the Kangaroo Jump, and there was a restaurant there, the Crazy Kangaroo, and the road to the Kangaroo restaurant, the downhill went over the top of it. So they just built a jump. You just jump over the road, and it was a first training run. It was foggy up top, so they moved the start down. And I was like, this is a wasted run. So nobody stripped down, no timing or anything. So we were just in our warm-ups and coats. And I just figured, well, I'll just throw a helicopter off the Kangaroo Jump. So I came in there at about 55 or 60 and threw a helicopter. The first thought when I did it was 223s didn't come around like 204s at the time, skis are a little long, downhill skis. And I remember when I went off, and it's just, you got to just keep looking. But I threw to do it, and I was like, oh, this. I thought there's no way my skis were like, they're not coming around, but came around, landed perfectly, got back in my tuck and ski to the finish. But yeah, it was, you look back on it, you go, it's probably one of the stupidest things you did in your career, because it could have ended your season very, very quickly. It sure was fun.
You would have liked to have had some kind of a twin tip at that point to be able to come back around and make it a little bit easier, but you can't go that fast on those same skis. I guess you were doing moves before Wayne was. I guess that's part of that story. So I get that part of it.
Oh, when we were young, growing up, I mean, we would be out in a mogul field before, race runs and stuff. We were just skiers. First off, to be a good ski racer, you have to be a good skier. And on that little mountain that's in your background, right, right there, there was a lot of terrain and stuff, and we just played a lot on that mountain, and we skied in all types of conditions. We really didn't have a whole lot of ice where we grew up. There was a lot of slop and powder and stuff like that. You had your ice after it rained or something and froze, but we just skied in anything and everything, and skiing was a passion. And we became great skiers, and then went on to be great ski racers.
Ski racing is single-minded. You're certainly going against the hill, not necessarily against the competitor. Even all those years, in both your cases, Ingemar Steinmark was certainly a foe that you had to deal with. But when you have a twin brother that's as good as you are, when you're racing, are you looking at the opponent like an opponent, or are you pulling for your brother to do well and you don't really care about the rest of the field? Is that what goes to your mental mind? Because if I'm racing down the hill, I'm trying to go as fast as I can to beat everybody. Does there something enter into that, Steve? Is that something that changes a little bit? And then the follow up to it is, who's the most competitive of the two of you?
But for the skiing side, I mean, when we were growing up, I mean, when we were little, I mean, Phil would win one day, I'd win the next. Phil would win the next day, I'd win the next. I mean, it was just back and forth, back and forth. And a lot of times, from time we were 8 to 13 years old, we would be 3, 4, 5 seconds ahead of the third place guy. We'd be close together. Third would be quite a ways behind us. And so had Phil not been there at that time, I wouldn't have had to push as much to win. And maybe I wouldn't have got as good as I got. So we pushed one another without really, I didn't compete per se against Phil and get mad at him when he beat me or whatever. I mean, I just said, okay, tomorrow I'm going to go faster and I'm going to beat him. I mean, and it was that way. And then when we got to be like 14, 15, things started going his way a little more. There was one year where for the whole season in slalom, I think maybe I ran 7 slaloms that year or something. We didn't go to a lot of races when we were younger because we couldn't afford to. Too many other kids in the family, and so we chose races that were going to help put us to qualify to go to another race or to do this next step or whatever. And that one year, I think we were probably 14 or 15. Every slalom race that year, I think I hooked tips in 3 of them. But otherwise, I got disqualified in every one for skipping gates. And I was going, I did not skip gates. I did not miss gates or whatever. And I got really discouraged. And the next year, the first race of the season, because of that previous year, I didn't have any points or whatnot for seeding. I got moved back in seeding, and we went down to Mount Hood for the first race of the year. And but as I skied down, I ended up being 5th after the first run, starting back in the 40s or 50s or something. And then I got promptly disqualified. I got one gatekeeper said, "You skipped all 4 of my gates." And I was going, you know what? They just don't want both mares. And they've chosen Phil.
Right. No, I get that.
I was almost to the point of saying, that's it, I'm done. But no, I ran the second run of protest, and I think I would have ended up being 3rd for that day. But like I said, I got disqualified in the long run. But people say, no, we got video of it. But video then was a Super 8 camera, which means you got to get the film, whatever, done stuff. But later, then like Phil made the team the year before I did. Then I came in and made the team. He was injured with his broken leg, so I went to Europe in the World Cup before he did. Got some decent results for a lot of times being starting in the 60s 80s in slalom and being in the top 15 after the first run, and then either not finishing the second run or not improving anymore. But I got better points and whatnot, and whatnot, moved to the A team before. And then so Phil came the next year, was on the B team for I think 1 weekend, and then was moved to the A team, whatnot. So but then again, at the world level, it wasn't just him all of a sudden. I mean, there were so many guys that you had to beat. I didn't have to just beat Phil to win. I had to beat a lot of other people. And the further I got into my career, and it took me, I think, longer than I did for Phil, I think. But all of a sudden I said, you know what? You can't worry about the other people. You can't think about the other people. Now, if you have no control over what they can do or what they're doing, I mean, sure, I can waste my energy saying fall, hook a tip or whatever to them, or I can just think about what I'm going to do. And when I started thinking about what can Steve Mahre do, I'll get in the starting gate and say, Steve, you ski the way you can ski, nobody can beat you. And that's when it became more competitive at the world level. And for me, like I said, that happened later for me than it did for Phil. I was probably 5 years into my World Cup career, which was 10 years long, before I really said, you know what, you can't think about other people, because if I go to Kitzbühel and it's icy there that year, I'm going, well, Stenmark, Krizai, Fromel, Gustavo Tuni, Hinaseer, all these guys are better than me on ice. Well, I've already decided that I'm going to be 9th or 10th on that day. And unfortunately, there's 20 other people that think they can still beat those guys, and so they all beat me too. And now I end up being 28th or something. And so as soon as you put those things out of your mind, concentrate on what you can do and believe in yourself, that's when it really happened for me, where I became more and more competitive.
I want to ask you a little bit about the Olympic experience, but you guys gained some fans that I don't even think you knew inside of USSA. There was a number of us club coaches that, like you, had little thin on the top. I lost mine at 20. So we all rooted voraciously for you guys, not because you were fast, but because you look like us. And I say that jokingly, but it was fun to watch. I was looking at some tape, and you guys run, and we'll talk a little bit about your camps that you guys have in Deer Valley. But I was watching a slalom race from '84, and Phil, you were doing sort of the step turn into the next gate, and obviously, ski coaching and ski racing has changed. But my question for you is, and it's a question I've asked through the sailing show and through our lacrosse programs, and certainly now through skiing, when you put the stripes on for the first time, it's another experience that's hard to explain unless you're able to be in that position. So maybe both of you can give me your thoughts and the idea of what it's like to ski for your country. It's a whole nother animal than skiing, just for the neighborhood or the state or even the region.
Well, I mean, first off, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, it's funny because I look back and the first Olympics I went to, I was 18 years old. Basically a year and a half at the World Cup level before going there, and it was. I figured, okay, I'm going to the Olympics. I'm going to see a bunch of ski racers. Then I got to the Olympic Village, and then you go to the opening ceremonies, and you're going, who in the heck are all these other people? I mean, because you got all the ice skaters, the bobsledders, the biathletes, just everybody, and so many more bobsledders, whatever, and it was all of a sudden, okay, this is a big thing, whatnot. And granted, I'm one of the lucky ones. There were four. The U.S. ski team could take 14, and it could be 7 men, 7 women, or 6 and 8 either way. And we always ended up taking 8 women and basically 6 guys. In Sarajevo, it was even less than that. We only took 5 guys by the qualifications criteria or whatnot. But every Olympics was kind of a different experience, really, per se. I knew what to expect going to 80, and then 84. It was, that going into that year, it was like, okay, I have two objectives this year: to win medals in the Olympics and to retire. The World Cup season didn't go that well in 84, but the Olympics came out really good, and the retirement happened as well. So I was successful in both those objectives or whatever. But the earlier ones, 76, I was an 18-year-old. Like I said, I didn't really expect a lot of myself. Was going to give it what I had and take what I got. And Phil ended up being 5th in the GS there. I myself was 13th in the GS. I was guaranteed a spot for the Olympic team in 76 for slalom because I was the second highest ranked slalom skier in the U.S. behind Jeff Bruce. And so I was guaranteed a spot for the slalom, but the hill there was pretty steep and icy, and I had been skiing terrible on ice. And so I gave up my spot. Greg Jones was skiing all 3 events because that was also our world championships. And Greg Jones was skiing for the world championship combined medal, where you ski all 3 disciplines, the regular events, and whoever got the most points or whatever during that deal won the medal for the world championship combined medal. And so I actually gave up my spot, and I think Kerry Adgate is the one that filled that, and then he ended up being the best American in the slalom there that year. In 84 or 80 in 1980, basically 8 weeks before the games, I tore 2 ligaments in my ankle. Really didn't ski until about 5 weeks before the games again. Just was back in doing rehab 3 times a day, and so that was kind of a letdown again. And then 84 was, I knew it was going to be my last year for sure, and everything worked out. But like I said, every one of them was a little different. I think as a kid, didn't really think of it so much. It didn't really dawn on me so much that, hey, you're here just representing, all these other people. That happened more in my second one. All of a sudden, it was a little bigger deal that, yeah, you're representing the U.S., and definitely in 84 that way as well.
Phil, you've been emotional. You've given emotional speeches about what it was like to stand on that podium and win gold. You said it really changed your perspective in terms of it was sort of me before, yeah. I before, and then it became us. And I'm not using that as a pun.
Yeah.
I'm just simply saying it. But is that still pretty true to your heart?
Oh yeah, totally. Sports are selfish. You don't do them for anybody. You don't do them for your country. You don't do them for your family, your coaches, your friends. It's about you, which is very selfish. And on the World Cup, you go out and you win a race, and you go to the Olympic Games, and Steve and I always kind of looked at the Olympic Games as just another race. I don't think we really said, "Oh, this is a really important one because it's the Olympic Games." But we just kind of said, we'll go there and do what you can do. If you try to do something special on those days, you won't compete well because you can only do what you normally do. And so we never. I think some of my Olympic races are some of the calmest or most laid back races of my career. I'm here to enjoy the Olympics and have fun and do what I can do. And if that's win medals, great. If that isn't, then the sun's coming up tomorrow. But throughout my career, I think there was a lot of, you have to have an ego if you want to be the best. But you don't have to show people, you just have to show people. You don't have to tell them how great you are. Just go out and ski race, and if you win, everybody realizes how great you are. But you have to have an ego. You have to think you're better than everybody else. And when I went to Sarajevo, I'd won a silver medal in Lake Placid in '80. It's probably, I think Seinfeld says it's best as first loser, and that's kind of the case. As Steve mentioned earlier, we almost retired after the '80 Olympics, and I beat myself up pretty hard over that. I won the first run by I think 38 hundredths, and then ended up losing to Stenmark by almost 7/10. I mean, he waxed me the second run, but I made 2 or 3 mistakes that run, and I realized then and there that to win a gold medal, you don't have to necessarily be the best. You just have to make the least number of mistakes. And in Sarajevo, I didn't win either run, but I won the race. But that podium there was completely different than Lake Placid. In Lake Placid, I got to listen to the Swedish national anthem. I got to watch his flag go at a higher stanchion than mine. Sarajevo, that was a different story.
Yeah.
And I realized then and there that it was bigger than me. Everybody throughout my career that ever wished me luck, family, friends, coaches, servicemen, they're all on that podium with you. And you realize you have a lot of people to thank, because my career would have never happened had it not been for America. So it was a big moment. As you stated, it kind of changed the way I looked at my career. It wasn't me. There was a lot of people involved.
Does the passion and the emotion come from mom or dad? Both of you.
Dad by far.
Okay.
Yeah.
I never saw my dad cry. My dad was.
You liar.
Yeah. I'd say I never saw my dad cry to a certain age, but no, they were cleaning. They were cutting a new trail at the ski area, and they were falling timber and stuff, and they were pushing over a dead snag or something with a bulldozer. And anyway, the root system, made the tree. It just didn't fall. It kind of went at an angle, and it fell on my dad. He ducked down between 2 stumps that had already been cut off or whatever, but it almost killed him. Broke his jaw in 5 places.
Wow.
He said he had a kind of out of life experience. Saw the other side, and from then on, he was a very emotional person. He'd cry at dinner saying grace sometimes. So we come by it honestly. I think that the farther we get removed from our careers, the more you realize how special that time was in your life. And you could never duplicate it. You could never do it again. You could never have those feelings, those sensations. And so it's emotional.
The last point of the '80 Olympics, you guys were bussed in, or actually helicoptered in from Killington. And I was figuring when I talked to Kerry last week, I was figured that you guys didn't want to end up having to stay in the jail, which essentially was the Olympic Village, turned out to be a county jail up on the north end of town. And they were building something there obviously for the athletes, but they also wanted to have a dual purpose. They didn't want to waste their money. So it was since 1980 I think about April of 1980. It started as a state jail, and still a state jail today. So it was it had some value. So you guys were lucky enough to bunk at Killington and not have to put up with staying in a very caustic looking. It was a pretty nasty looking place. So I know the Russians complained a lot, but at any rate. Question.
I think a lot of people have complained, and they realized late on that they didn't have enough housing there, and so they brought in trailers and stuff like that. And I was the lone ski team member that stayed in the village, I think, the whole time, because I was skiing all three disciplines. Right. And so, but Bell Huey had given the U.S. ski team a helicopter for the games or whatever, and we had a guy. He was a Vietnam vet, Clem Bailey, Clem Bailey, I think was his name. But anyway, he was our pilot. And I would spend the night in the village. I would train downhill in the morning, and then I would jump on a helicopter and fly to Killington and train GS or slalom. And so I was flying every day in that helicopter. But yeah, that was a great experience, and he would get us off the ground, and he'd say, "Oh, you want to fly? It's your bird, Phil." And he'd let me fly, and then I'd get over to Killington, and we come in and get about 100 feet from the ground, and I'm just kind of this and that, and then he'd go, "Okay, I got it, Phil." And he'd land the thing, but it was a fun experience and something that I'll always cherish. But no, the village was interesting to say the least there.
You mentioned that you're a three discipline skier. Phil, you won 81, 82, 83. You won the overall World Cup championships. Partly because Ingemar Steinmark, who was obviously had won it, I think 3 or 4 years prior to you, he was essentially he was a technical skier. He didn't spend a lot of time in the speed events, and you did. Do you look at that as one of those sort of lucky strokes? I mean, obviously you won because you were faster than everybody, but if he competes in a few more events, it would have been a little bit of a tighter race. Is that a fair comparison?
Yeah. Well, my first overall World Cup win was 81. And the only reason I won that World Cup was I had, scored points in downhill combined. I don't know if I scored points in downhill, but I scored points in combined. And I think I won that year by 6 points, the last race of the season. But Steve and I were tech skiers. We never trained downhill unless it was at a combined event. So you'd make your 2 or 3 training runs, and then you'd race the downhill, and then you put your downhill skis away, and you would never get them out again until there was another downhill combined with a slalom or something. But 82, I would have won the overall World Cup title. I won every title but the downhill title that year. I won the slalom title, the GS title, combined title. So I would have won. That would have been the only one that I won had they not changed the scoring system. But they changed the scoring system to include combined races. And if you didn't run combines, you were giving up points, basically. And so it was just playing the system and making points in combined races. We had 5 combined races. You could only use your best 3 results. And so if I won the first 3 combines, then I said, well, I have to run the next 2 so nobody else can win them. You didn't want to give up points. You didn't want to, and so I would run 5 downhills a year just to make sure combines were, in my bag or my quiver versus somebody else's. And those extra points make all the difference in the world when it comes down to, the overall World Cup title. But it was, it's just a matter of the system. There was a downhill skier was never going to win the overall World Cup title. Back then, you either were a tech skier or a speed skier. And nowadays, if you want to win the World Cup title, you have to be a downhill skier, super G skier, and a GS skier. And the slalom guy is the odd man out. He'll never win the World Cup title. It's hard to win the World Cup nowadays as a tech skier. You have to be a speed skier just because of the way the system is. GS is really a speed event almost now. With the skis they have versus a technical event.
I want to thank Steve and Phil, but I want you to stay tuned for our 3rd episode because we will talk quite a bit about K2, the World Cup that goes on and how they were involved in that. And I think you'll find that to be a great part of the interview. Up next is Jack Pippin. Jack will be talking to us a little bit about what it's like to be out in the Sierra at Sierra Tahoe, and we'll have that conversation with him in just a second. Welcome back to Inside Great Lakes Skiing. We have a treat today. I get a chance to talk to somebody who's a longtime great acquaintance. I don't know that we're friends because we haven't spent that much time together, but certainly I would consider you a friend, and I say that in the best possible way. We certainly share a love of skiing, and we're talking to Jack Pippin, and we're talking to Jack from South Lake Tahoe, who is the ski school director at Sierra at Tahoe. And there's a whole story we're going to talk about, but mostly I want to talk to you a little bit, and we'll get into it, about the great opportunity of being sort of a ski bum, if you will. And I say that professionally. In midlife, you left Michigan because you were the ski school director at Mount Brighton for a number of years, and kind of went out west, and we were all envious because we all did it when we were 20, but then we realized we had house payments and car payments, and you took a different turn. So Jack, first of all, thanks for spending some time with us. Tell us a little bit about how the snow's going right now out there, because I don't think all that well.
No, we've got a slow start to the season. We've got some storms that are rolling in right now. There's most of the resorts out here in the far west are opening slowly. We're getting there. We're all getting there very slowly. Some of the larger resorts that are a little bit more robust in snowmaking. And you think, well, geez, you don't need snowmaking out west. It just snows and snows and snows. But a lot of times to get the season up and running in some of those areas, you need some snowmaking. The resort that I'm at right now, where it's not real robust, it sits on the front side of the Sierra Crest. So those storms come up and stack up on that Sierra Crest and kind of hold there for us. And then because of that, Sierra Tahoe gets loaded up with snow. And then they'll break over into the lake, or move to the left or move to the right around the lake. That's where, on the North Shore, where you've got Palisades and Sugar Bowl up on the North Shore, and they get hit pretty tough. Last year we had record numbers of snow. The amount of snow that we had last year was just staggering. I think we were around 800 inches of snow, and literally we were getting it 3-foot dumps. I would plow the driveway when I got home at night, 2 or 3 feet, wake up in the morning and plow another 2 or 3 feet. So it was an interesting winter, to say the least.
For somebody who likes the white stuff, you've certainly found yourself in the middle of it.
Yeah. We have our drought years, and like you said, coming into this season, we're into that right now. We're starting to get the storms now. They're starting to come through. Very small though, not the big storms, giving us a little bit. So we're looking at opening. We're pretty excited about opening on Saturday, this coming Saturday. So that'll be good. We get ourselves open, and away we go.
I want to get into context about how you've gotten there, but since you're opening a mountain here in the next week at least, or maybe the next couple of days, you've opened Brighton for 15 years. Now you're opening, obviously, mountains. Are the checklists the same? I'm just curious because I don't know, and I've never really had a chance to ask this question. Are the checklists the same, and you just got more people, or is it a whole different animal opening something that's got 300 vertical feet versus 2,500?
Yeah, you're biting out a little bit more with big mountain. You've got a lot more acreage that you're dealing with. You've got a lot larger staffs. In some cases, you're managing multiple locations on the mountain, to where you've got a couple different ski schools. Because of the birth of it, you may have some different ski schools in different locations, all doing the same thing, mind you, but just for convenience for the guest, just in different locations. So you have to literally, what I found moving west is you have to pull yourself at 30,000 feet and manage from 30,000 feet. I've always been a guy that prided myself with, you'll see me down in the trenches. You'll see me out there with a drill, trying to set some gates, but I'm not very good at it, but I always tried. or a shovel in my hand, or, whatever it took, or to do some things. And, coming out here, it's just, it was one of the things that I had to get used to, is pulling myself to 30,000 feet and managing a team. Part of, that managing a team is, because it's a pretty robust leadership team that you're managing, is setting those expectations. It's not a whole lot different than, when I cut my teeth back at Mount Brighton in leadership and being the director at Mount Brighton. and I had a phenomenal team back there. Still a great group of people back there, and they're carrying on that legacy also of being a great place to go learn to ski, and a mountain that you can go as a family and really enjoy yourself and have a good time. They're carrying that forward, but it's about preparation and planning, being out front with what you're doing and setting expectations, and those are the things. And then going back through the check the boxes, and then go back through and check them again to make sure that you're taking care of things.
You get used to elevation in terms of your lungs and the air. And I say that because we all come out west for vacations, and the first couple of days that there's a bit of climatology that comes in preparing and sort of climatizing to the do you notice it, or do you just now it's part of what because you're at that level anyway?
I'm at this level. There's certain times if I'm up above 9,000 feet, I'm around 10,000 feet, and if I'm hiking or something like that, I start to blow a little bit. At my age, I think we all do.
Right.
And but yeah, you get used to it.
Okay.
I find it when I come home, I'll come home to Michigan and for a couple weeks at a time, and then when I get back here, I'm like, whoa. It's amazing how quickly you kind of it kind of goes away. A little bit of it goes away.
I don't think we should buy hyperbaric chambers at this point, but I certainly understand the difference between the with just the stratospheres of air.
Yeah.
For context, Jack, I just want to kind of briefly, you're a Eisenhower guy, went to Ferris, got a business degree, spent some time with Dad working in the tool and die business, eventually ended up in the farrier business for about 20 years. And so you had this sort of kind of a cool career. You've kind of made some left-hand turns where maybe others would make right. The question I want to ask about the farrier before we get onto the skiing, what's the difference between a farrier and a blacksmith?
Blacksmith makes tools, a farrier shoes horses.
Okay. All right. That's fair. That's
the easiest way to put it. Okay. I mean, back in the day, the blacksmith did both. Made the tools and shoed the horses because they had to make the shoes. We did some of that. I did some of that along the way. Not a lot of it.
Now, your ski career started early at Mount Brighton. At Pine Knob.
At Pine Knob.
That's where it kind of got started. So the names of the past, the Ed Sigmunds, and some of the names that we all know from the Great Lakes here.
Yeah, the Sigmund boys, the Sam Cucciarelli, Enzo Salvatore, Ron Brown, Robbie Brown. Robbie was a little kid at that point in time, and now he's coaching, and I think he's coaching over at Alpine Valley. Last I knew.
So you got a pretty good start. I just up the road. I was a little older than you, so I got to start with some of the guys up there with Dean and all the stuff at Mount Holly. But in those days, now it's all owned by one guy. Cossack owns most of it with JFK, and that's changed. And but so you started there. Obviously, a farrier is kind of a summer, more fall type job. So obviously, is that the easiest way? Was that why it was so easy to sort of ease into the process of being a full-time ski?
Yeah, absolutely. That filled that void in the wintertime, being, self-employed, doing that and doing some construction along the way, and then having the ability to pivot and, work in the ski industry when that got started up. And then, given the opportunity to lead the team over at Mount Brighton after being at Mount Brighton for quite a few years. And, the Bruin family giving me the opportunity over there to lead the ski school over there. That was what it was. And then led the ski school over there until the acquisition from Vail Resorts of Mount Brighton, and then worked with the reconstruction of Mount Brighton with the Vail guys for 2 years. I worked on that project with them and worked pretty extensively with that with Taylor Ogilvie and there was a gentleman by the name of Todd Rudis who they brought in from Heavenly, actually, out there. And after a couple of years, the opportunity came up to make that move west, and the different things in my life at that point in time lined up, and I had the opportunity to come out to Heavenly with Vail Resorts and moved out here.
Okay, so let me start with the simplest of questions. When we were all in college, We
Yeah.
worked the snow line going west. We'd end up someplace, and by the time we worked the snow line, we'd end up in Jackson. And what the snow line was, you could work teaching for free. They give you a place to live. They just didn't pay you. You take the lessons nobody wanted, or you'd work, chasing dynamite or whatever it might be. But you'd work the snow line for 6 weeks, and you'd come home. You'd live in your van, and if you were lucky enough to play certain places. So now you're an older guy, and I say an older guy. At this point, you're 63 now, so I guess you got to be late 40s, early 50s at this point.
Yeah.
My question is, you're getting a chance to take this. How much of the decision was a better ski job in terms of your profession, or how much of it was just, oh my God, I get to be out there instead of skiing 300 vertical feet all day? Was skiing and the love of that sport part of that decision?
Oh, absolutely. The love of the sport was always there. I mean, it was really difficult for me to leave Mount Brighton and leave my team at Mount Brighton. But, as you lead teams, and I don't care what profession you're in, you always wonder, like, at that next level, am I able to make this work? Am I able to lead at this level, at that next level, at that big mountain level? And that was something that always was in the back of my mind is, if the things that I'm doing at Mount Brighton and the successes that we're seeing here, is this just because it's 250 feet of vertical or 300 feet of vertical? And will that same success be able to follow me west in what it is? And once I got out here, I came out as a children's GM at Heavenly. And I had three schools at Heavenly, three different locations in 2 states. So needless to say, every day I got my vertical feet in, going from school to school, to check on things. But what I found, Greg, is that those same basic leadership skills, whether I was at Mount Brighton or I was out here, they followed me out here, just using the same principles that I used there. The work ethic, the Midwest work ethic is a real thing. That is truly a real thing. And that resilience of that Midwest work ethic and the Midwest people, it's definitely a real thing. Came out here and started. One of the things I've seen really quick in Heavenly, that's a mountain that's been here a long time, and it was run by some really great people. And you look at things when you start to get into it a little bit, and you're like, well, shoot, they have the same problems I had at Mount Brighton. And, and they have the same big successes that I had at Mount Brighton, a little bit bigger stage, same problems. So you work through those the same way you did. So I took the principles and everything I learned coming along the way, and I was taught by some really great men, and the people I worked with at Brighton, just the collection of people. And there was a lot of the instructors in the Midwest, because you have the night skiing, it's not like it's not your day job. It's your fun job. It's that job you go do in the evening, teach one class or two classes in the evening, and maybe work on a Saturday or Sunday. It's not your normal day job. So the guys I got an opportunity to work with, to cross everything from school teachers to police officers to doctors to judges to carpenters to excavating guys to guys, even back at Bright, guys living in their car. And the one thing that the mountain or the hill doesn't know is your economic value.
Right.
It doesn't matter,
100%.
who you are, what you are, or how accomplished you are. The mountain's the mountain.
Yeah, that's certainly for sure. Anybody in your immediate circle in those days that maybe wasn't an enamored skier, was there doubts? Daughters, sons, family, mother? Was anybody questioning the decision early on?
Myself.
Okay.
There's a thing called buyer's remorse. And I accepted the job, and I came out here, and I was sitting in a hotel room, and because they put me up in a hotel room until I could find a house to live in here and things. And I remember that first night sitting in the hotel room, and I looked over in the mirror, and a big old crocodile tear rolled down my face, and I said, what did I do? I left my friends, my home, my team, my family, all back in Michigan. what did I do? And I doubted myself. I said, I came out here, and if I come out here and I'm a failure, what then, Jack? And I sat there and I thought about it. And yeah, I second guessed myself. The one thing with my friends and my family, they knew they knew where it was going to go. They knew what was going to happen. And they would tell me, you're going to be fine. Do what you do, Jack, and you'll be fine. And so I kept telling myself that. And I said, I think my biggest doubter at first was just I was I was afraid. I was like, wow, this is a lot. I've bit off that I bite off more than I can chew. But man, I tell you what, you get into it, and if it's what you love, like, I just love the business and I love making a difference in somebody's life, whether that's a student or whether that's an employee. And that's what I concentrated on, is just trying to make those differences in someone's life
And it
through a
must have
sport
worked,
that I love.
must have worked pretty well. Heavenly to obviously Sugar Bowl, now director of skiing at Sierra Tahoe, which
Yeah.
just to give people sort of a recognition, understanding, you were talking about Heavenly being in 2 states. Heavenly's an interesting place because if you ski the front side, you ski the California side, Gun
Mhm.
Barrel is a very steep from the bottom up, and it's all the beginner stuff's at the top of the hill. The
Right.
other side is completely the opposite of that. And if you can get down Gun Barrel, there's not much that you can handle it at certainly at Heavenly, but it really isn't odd. Sierra at Tahoe is a little bit, and we were talking about this earlier, is a little bit sort of like Nub's Knob. It's the place where I'm not saying the real skiers, but it's very much a local,
Very local.
a bit of a hidden gem, if you will, from that standpoint.
Yes, it is. I mean, it's a real, it's exactly like it is. I would say it's Nub's Knob of South Lake Tahoe, definitely. It's got that family vibe, that true family vibe. They, we look at things that we want to make skiing affordable for the families. When we look at the families over on the Western Slope, and the Western Slope is the slope that's heading out towards like the families from Sacramento, Placerville, Folsom, out that direction. And all the way down into the bay around San Francisco. On the weekends, we get that train of people, just like I-75 going north. In the wintertime, we get that train of people coming across 50, or they're coming across, I-80, whether they're going to the North Shore on I-80 or they're coming to the South Shore on 50. It's the same thing that we get with those people. And being able to attract those families, and also, locally, having that place and that venue that's a little bit less corporate. Not that the corporate's bad. I had an amazing career with Vail and Brighton, and it was great, and I really enjoyed that company very much.
Couple industry questions. If you were watching this, I'm not going to be rude and ask you how much money you make, because that would be way too rude. My mom would be mad. But I do have a couple questions. One of the things we're trying to do in a thread of this show is to get through the season, because I think anybody you've talked to, we had a chance on the first show to talk to Stephen Kircher a little bit about just the changing. We were complaining about 70-year-old guys I'm going to get next year should get free passes, but there's no longer free passes because, as he pointed out, he spent $44 million in lifts this past year. So nobody's skiing for free. I understand that.
Right.
Nobody really understands the Icon Pass. They just know that lift tickets, if you walk up at Aspen, they're $300. The business is changing. So here's my question. I'm a 20-year-old, 25-year-old. If I come out west and I work as a full-time ski instructor in the wintertime, and I'm a PSIA level 1, can you give me a ballpark figure about what money I might be able to make? Is it enough money to live out of my car? And then the question is, can you make not a substantial, but can you make a reasonable living as a ski school director?
Yeah, you can make a good living as a ski school director. Coming in as that 22-year-old, 23-year-old level 1 ski instructor. A lot of the ski instructors, and I think if you look back historically over time, you live in a ski town, you have a couple different jobs. You work a couple different jobs, and maybe you work, a restaurant job also a couple nights a week, just for that little bit of extra cash to be able to afford. That living wage, when we talk about that living wage in mountain towns, get really tough a lot of times. I think that, Vail Resorts has been the tip of the spear with driving what that minimum wage looks like, with that $20 minimum. Every employee starts at $20. And that was a big shift for a lot of resorts across, when you look at everything in the far west and even in Colorado that weren't part of the Vail machine. And didn't have the support of 40 resorts behind it to try to make this work. So coming up with pay, bringing that pay scale up at a lot of the other resorts was a tough one to bite, because in a lot of cases you were raising what that minimum wage was by maybe 30%. And obviously your ticket prices weren't going up 30%, and your pass prices weren't going up 30%, the other stuff. So it had to come from somewhere, right? But yeah, you can make it, you can live. There's, it's like I tell a lot of the young kids that come in here, you're buying into a lifestyle also. Greg, you can be rich in many ways in this life. You can own your own business and be very wealthy. You can become a doctor, you can become a lawyer, school teacher. You can be a family man and be rich in family and have a couple of kids in a neighborhood and, T-ball and that whole thing. And that's a great wealth also, and a great way to go. And then you can be rich in lifestyle. And we look at lifestyle, and it's like I tell my people every day to remember what they're doing and where they're at, and how our guest, and there's a lot of our guests that save their money to come on this one trip for the year. All year long, they save their money for that week, and they come out here for a good time and have, a safe time. And remember, we want to deliver what with a great product. We want to give them a good product. We want to give them a fun product. We want to send them home safe and not hurt. So, just making sure that guest service is up there too. And the kids, when you start talking about you're rich in lifestyle, you get to do every day what someone gets to come and do for a week.
No, and I get that, but now I'm 20. If I come out and I'm a level 1 and I'm working for you for 40 hours, am I making $500 a week, $600 a week, $100 a week? Ballpark.
You're making $20 an hour plus your tips.
Okay.
Tips can be good.
Okay. So
Tips.
Yeah.
Tips
So
are good.
you're making a livable wage.
A livable wage, yes.
And
you're living in a house with probably, 4 or 5 other guys.
right.
Just
and I get that. No, I'm asking the question because it's nice to have a wonderful place to work and great views. But if you're living in the back of your truck, the views go away pretty good if you can't feed. So that's the reason I'm asking the question.
Yeah.
And a lot of the kids today are looking for money like I said, we'd pack 4 guys in a van and go out, and between us we had $600 or $700. We had enough money for gas. And if we were lucky enough to get a job, we're in the snow line working our way back, we were happy because we were getting fed and skiing. And, you'd call back at the end of 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever, you'd been out there for a while. You'd call mom and dad and say, listen, I need another $100 to get the gas back to drive back home.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of that anymore because everybody plans too much. They don't just go off the seat of their pants. They just don't. Kids don't, They don't act that way. So that's one of those things. Last question.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The other thing is, the resorts are very cognizant of that also. And they do a lot of different things that, every resort that I was ever at, they do things to try to supplement for the employees. Like, once a week, they'll have an employee dinner. So, like at 5 or 6 o'clock, one of the restaurants at the base is open and everyone gets together and goes in there, and the team building that is done is phenomenal.
Yeah.
There's always employee only parties, because trying to, navigate, feeding yourself, finding a place to live, having a car, maybe some gas and some insurance on that car. And then, and occasionally go out and have a good time in the evening. It's tough. So we try to help them along with that, like giving them activities, and we have parties and we have theme parties and everything in the world and it's fun. It makes it fun. It makes a difference.
Well, I think of Aspen too. Like there's a lot of companies now, Vail included, Aspen Corporation, they're putting up dormitories so that they can house their own employees, because the cost of local living has gotten to be ridiculous. And that way they can at least have some control over what the folks they can get to hire, because everybody's got a help wanted signs hanging out somewhere. So that's the reason we were asking the question. Last question, and this is what we've been trying to follow through most of this. You're 63. You've had all this opportunity in skiing. What is it you like tomorrow morning, next week, next month? You're going to get a morning where you just get a chance to get on a lift and go ski a couple runs before you got to go back to the office to talk to everybody. What is it you love about skiing?
When you set that turn and you come through the apex of that turn and you feel that whoosh and you feel that energy underneath you pushing you down the hill, that is the juice for me. That's what I love doing, feeling that wind in my face, having that time to myself, to do that challenge. And doesn't matter what slope I'm on, I can get that feeling on a green run or a blue run or on a powder day. I can still get that same feeling.
Well, I've had the good opportunity to watch you teach skiing and teach classes and certainly mentor at the ski school level. And I don't think there's anybody better in the country. You're one of the best I've ever seen. And I've been around this a little bit.
Thank you.
I'm wearing my Brighton hat because of the celebration of Aspen Extreme. And for those who know, they know. If they don't, it doesn't matter. I had to pull this out of wherever I pulled it out of from that standpoint. So, listen, I appreciate the time you've spent with us and just such great insight if somebody's looking at making a career out of it. So I appreciate your time and have what hopefully be a great winner.
Oh, thank you so much for the time also and the opportunity to sit and have this conversation. And like you said earlier, we have been friends for a long time. We've done some fun stuff together and we've made a difference. And that's what we strive to do. And if I could leave anybody with any message, and whether it's skiing or bowling or whatever you do, try to make a difference in that person's life going forward, another person's life going forward, because by doing that, you will make a difference in your own life.
Thanks, Jack. I want to thank Jack for kind of explaining and sort of giving us some inspiration about what it's like to make a midlife crisis and go all the way out west. And it was a really fun conversation. You get a chance to be in the South Lake Tahoe area, certainly stop in and check with Jack at Sierra. I think you'll find it to be a great mountain. Also, we want to thank Steve and Phil for talking to us a little bit about their careers. In our third episode, we will have the conclusion of our interview with the two of them. And that's something you want to stay forward to. And in that interview, we'll also get a chance to talk to the best coach I've ever met, Bob Weil. Bob will talk a little bit about the language of skiing and, more importantly, the essence of skiing. And you'll learn about the sort of how you should teach and why words are important when you're coaching. And that'll be in our third episode, which will be a companion piece to this because of the great interview you had with Steve and Phil. So until the next episode, stick around and we'll see you soon.